power, betrayal, civil war, a stolen crown, and a woman who came closer than any before her to ruling England in her own right. Let's step into her world. Matilda was born around 1102, into a dynasty still new, still hard, still forged in conquest. Her father was King Henry I of England, the youngest son of William the Conqueror, the Norman Duke who had seized England in 1066. The Norman kings did not rule gently. They ruled through law, castles, and iron will. Henry I was the most capable of them, educated, calculating, and deeply aware that power must be secured, not assumed. Matilda was born into privilege, but not into certainty. In medieval Europe, a daughter was rarely seen as a future ruler. She was a diplomatic tool, a piece on the chessboard of dynasties. Yet fate and tragedy would transform her from royal daughter into the center of a kingdom-shaking storm. When Matilda was still a child, Europe's political map shifted around her. In 1110, at about 8 years old, she was sent across the Channel and deep into the Holy Roman Empire to marry Henry V, Holy Roman Emperor. This was no minor alliance. The empire stretched across much of Central Europe, and the marriage tied England to one of the most powerful rulers in Christendom. In 1114, she was crowned Empress, and from then on she would style herself not as princess, but Imperatrix, Empress Matilda. This title mattered. It shaped how she saw herself, not as a pawn, but as a sovereign. Her years in Germany were formative. She witnessed imperial court politics, diplomacy, and the machinery of rule on a continental scale. She was not cloistered away. She moved in circles of power, and chroniclers noted her dignity, education, and authority. But the marriage produced no surviving children, and in 1125, Emperor Henry V died. At only about 23 years old, Matilda was a widow, childless, powerful in name, but politically unanchored. Across the sea, disaster had struck her father. In 1120, the English royal succession had been shattered in one of the most infamous maritime tragedies of the Middle Ages, the White Ship disaster. Henry I's only legitimate son, William Adelin, drowned when the ship sank in the English Channel. With him died many young nobles of England and Normandy. The Norman royal line was suddenly perilously thin. Henry I understood the danger. A disputed succession meant civil war. He had only one legitimate child left, Matilda. In an extraordinary move for the time, Henry I declared that his daughter would inherit his realms. In 1127, and again later, he forced the leading barons of England and Normandy to swear oaths recognizing Matilda as his lawful heir. This was radical. A woman ruling in her own right was almost unthinkable in Norman political culture. But Henry had no choice. Still, he knew she would need a power base in Normandy. So in 1128, he arranged her marriage to Geoffrey Plantagenet, Count of Anjou, a young, ambitious noble from a family long at odds with the Normans. The marriage was politically logical, but personally tense. Matilda, an empress used to imperial courts, reportedly looked down on Geoffrey, who was younger and from a rival house. Yet this union would change European history. From it would come the Plantagenet dynasty, which would rule England for centuries. Then, in 1135, Henry I died. Everything he had tried to secure unraveled within weeks. Despite their oaths, many barons hesitated to accept a female ruler, especially one married to a powerful Angevin lord they distrusted. Into the vacuum stepped Stephen of Blois, Henry I's nephew. Stephen moved fast. He crossed to England, won over key nobles and church leaders, and was crowned King Stephen before Matilda could react. It was a coup, swift, opportunistic, and effective. Matilda did not accept it. For years, she had been gathering support in Normandy. By 1139, she was ready to challenge Stephen directly. She landed in England, and the country slid into what chroniclers would call the Anarchy, a brutal civil war that lasted nearly 2 decades. Castles multiplied across the landscape as rival lords fortified their positions, law and order frayed. Chroniclers wrote that Christ and his saints slept. This was not a single continuous battlefield, but a grinding struggle of sieges, shifting loyalties, and regional power plays. Matilda proved no passive claimant. She moved with determination, forging alliances with powerful nobles, most notably her half-brother Robert of Gloucester, one of the most capable military leaders of the age. Robert became the backbone of her cause. In 1141, the war reached a turning point at the Battle of Lincoln. Stephen's forces were defeated, and Stephen himself was captured. Suddenly, Matilda stood on the edge of victory. With the king imprisoned, she was the undisputed power in much of England. She entered London not as queen, but as Lady of the English Domina Anglorum, a title that emphasized authority without the formal coronation she still needed. Yet here, politics turned against her in subtler ways. Chroniclers, many hostile, described her as proud, imperious, and unwilling to bend to London's citizens and barons. Some of this may reflect gender bias. A man acting with authority might be called strong, but a woman was called arrogant. Still, support eroded. Before she could be crowned, a revolt in London forced her to flee. Soon after, disaster struck her camp. Her half-brother Robert of Gloucester was captured. A prisoner exchange followed. Stephen was released in exchange for Robert. The war reset. The crown still contested. Years of grinding conflict followed. Neither side could secure decisive dominance. Castles changed hands. Regions shifted allegiance. The kingdom bled slowly. Matilda herself showed extraordinary resilience. In one of the most famous episodes of the war, she was trapped in Oxford Castle in winter. Under cover of snow, she escaped by night, reportedly dressed in white to blend into the landscape, crossing the frozen Thames and slipping through enemy lines. It became legend, the Empress who would not yield, but time reshaped the struggle. Matilda's direct chances of ruling England herself faded. Yet she had a son, Henry, born in 1133 to Geoffrey of Anjou. This boy would become her greatest weapon. Matilda poured her energy into securing his future. Henry grew into a formidable young leader, inheriting both Norman and Angevin claims. By the early 1150s, the war-weary English barons sought stability than victory for either original claimant. In 1153, Henry Matilda's son invaded England. Stephen, aging and exhausted, faced reality. In the Treaty of Wallingford, Stephen recognized Henry as his heir, disinheriting his own son. It was the compromise that ended the anarchy. Stephen died in 1154, and Matilda's son became King Henry II of England, the first Plantagenet king, ruler of an empire stretching from Scotland's borders to the Pyrenees. Matilda never wore the English crown. Yet she had achieved something almost as extraordinary. She had fought a king to a standstill and placed her son on the throne. In her later years, she returned to Normandy, where she governed territories, advised Henry II, and remained politically active. She died in 1167. On her tomb was an inscription emphasizing not queenship, but lineage and dignity. Daughter of a king, wife of an emperor, mother of a king. History often remembers the victors, but Matilda's legacy is deeper than a title. She shattered assumptions about female political power in medieval Europe. She led armies, negotiated treaties, endured defeat without surrender, and reshaped the English monarchy through sheer persistence. Without Empress Matilda, there is no Henry II. Without Henry II, there is no Richard the Lionheart, no King John, no Magna Carta in the form we know. England's later medieval history, its laws, its conflicts, its empire building, all trace back to the iron will of a woman who refused to step aside. She did not win the crown. She won history.